Hello, dear ones. Come sit with me for a moment. I want to tell you a story about a different kind of strength. I grew up in a community where nobody took a single vitamin, no supplements, no capsules, no powders, no morning handful of pills lined up beside a glass of water. Nothing like that existed in our world. And the people I grew up around were some of the strongest, longest living people I have ever known. You see, our strength was like a garden. It didn't come from a box. It grew slowly from the earth we walked on. Like a tree with deep roots, we were fed by things you cannot buy, only things you can live. I am 90 years old now. I was raised Amish in rural Pennsylvania, and I lived that quiet life until I was 34. When I stepped into the modern world, I was genuinely shocked by one thing above almost everything else. It wasn't the electricity or the fast cars or even the television that took my breath away. It was the vitamins, shelves and shelves of them in every store I walked into. It felt like a rainbow in a bottle. Bottles promising strength, energy, immunity, longevity, everything my community had simply lived without. We didn't buy our health. We breathed it, we ate it, and we shared it with one another. It's like trying to capture the sun in a jar. You can't really do it, can you? You just have to stand in the light. Our immunity was built in the soil and in the way we held each other up when the days were long. I want to tell you what we had instead. Not because vitamins are wrong, dear, but because there is another way. What kept an entire community strong and living long was never once sold in a bottle. It was something deeper. It was in the rhythms of the morning and the secrets of the kitchen that most people have forgotten. When I left the community and settled into modern life, I tried to fit in the way anyone does when they come from somewhere different. I watched what people around me did and I followed along. My new neighbors took vitamins every morning, so I started taking vitamins every morning. My doctor recommended a multivitamin, so I added that too. Within a few years, I had a small collection of bottles on my kitchen counter. Vitamin D, vitamin C, calcium, fish oil, B12. I took them faithfully for nearly 20 years. But I noticed something during those same 20 years that I could not quite name at first. I was not as strong as I had been, not as resilient, not as steady, not as well in the quiet, everyday way I had been raised to be well. I was tired more often than I ever remembered being in the community. My joints ached in ways they had not when I was doing physical work from sunrise to sundown. My sleep was lighter and less restoring, and I kept adding supplements trying to address each symptom as it arrived. One bottle for the fatigue, another for the joints, another because someone told me I probably needed it. The counter got more crowded and I kept feeling the same. Then my youngest daughter asked me something that stopped me completely. She said, "Mama, what did your people actually do?" I sat with that question for a long time, because the honest answer was something I had slowly stopped doing without ever making the decision to stop. And I'm going to tell you exactly what that was. I started writing things down from memory. Not a list of what we avoided, but a list of what we actually did every single day without thinking of it as health practice. Because that was the thing about growing up Amish. Nobody called it wellness. Nobody called it a routine or a protocol or a lifestyle. It was just life. The way life was lived because it was the only way we knew. And as I wrote it down, I began to understand why the people I grew up with were so rarely unwell. It was not that they had found a secret. It was that they had never stopped doing the basic things that the modern world had quietly replaced with convenience. I called my older brother, who still lives close to the community. He is 86 and still works with his hands every day. I told him what I had been thinking about, and he was quiet for a moment. He's always been the quiet one, my brother. Then he said, "We never needed to think about being well because everything we did made us well without us knowing it. We've traded our movement for buttons and our fresh food for boxes. We forgot that the doing is the healing. It was in the shared work and the shared meals. It was in the very air we breathed together while our hands were busy. That sentence is the whole answer. Everything we did made us well." It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Let me walk you through what I remembered. Let me show you the first thing we did every morning before the sun was even fully up. It's the most natural thing in the world, and yet it's the hardest for most to find. The first thing I wrote down was sunlight. Every single day of my childhood began outdoors, not a walk to the mailbox and back. Real time, under open sky, working, moving, breathing outdoor air from the first hours of the morning. What I did not know then, but understand now, is that daily sunlight exposure is one of the most powerful ways the body produces vitamin D naturally. The vitamin D deficiency that is now epidemic among older adults was simply not a conversation that existed in our community. Not because we were taking supplements, because we were outside every day without exception. The second thing I wrote down was the food, and specifically where it came from. Everything we ate was grown, raised, or made within a few miles of where we lived. Vegetables pulled from the ground that morning, eggs from chickens we knew by name, bread made from grain we had ground ourselves. No processing, no packaging, no ingredients that required a chemistry degree to read. Research now consistently shows that whole, unprocessed foods carry a density of natural nutrients that processed foods simply cannot replicate. We were not eating for nutrition. We were just eating what was there, and what was there was enough. The third thing was movement, but not the kind you schedule. Nobody in my community went for a workout, but everyone moved from the moment they woke until the moment they slept. Lifting, carrying, walking, building, tending, harvesting. The body was in constant, gentle, purposeful motion all day long. We weren't trying to burn calories, we were just living. Sunlight, food, and movement. They sound so basic, don't they? But there is a fourth thing, something most people do with their eyes closed. Research now points to consistent low-level daily movement as one of the most protective things an aging body can do for its joints and its metabolic health. We did not know that. We were just doing what needed to be done. The fourth thing I wrote down was community itself. Nobody ate alone. Nobody worked alone. Nobody suffered alone. There was always someone at the table, someone in the field beside you. Research on longevity now consistently identifies social connection as one of the strongest predictors of long life and physical health in older adults. We did not have a word for loneliness because the conditions for it barely existed. The fifth thing was the one I had drifted furthest from: sleep that followed the sun. In the community, when the light left, the day wound down. It felt natural, not forced. That alignment with natural light cycles regulates cortisol and allows the body to move through its full overnight repair process. I had been fighting that rhythm for decades with artificial light. When I returned to sleeping with the light, everything in my body began to settle. The sixth thing was something harder to name, but I will try. Purpose that required your body. Your physical presence was needed every single day. The animals needed feeding, the fields needed tending, the family needed feeding. Your body had a reason to be strong, and it responded to that reason. Research on aging now shows that having a daily physical purpose dramatically slows the decline that comes from simply sitting and waiting for time to pass. We were never given the option to stop being physically needed, and I believe that is why so many of us stayed strong so long. But even with all these things, there was one more. The thing that tied it all together. Our Amish multivitamin. It was that liquid gold I mentioned earlier. I cleared my kitchen counter 2 years ago. Not entirely. I still take what my doctor has specifically recommended for my age and my individual needs. I want to be clear about that. But the long row of bottles I had accumulated over decades trying to buy back what I had simply stopped doing, those are gone. I go outside every morning now, regardless of the weather. The morning air, whether it's crisp with frost or warm with the summer sun, is my first medicine. I eat as close to the ground as I can manage. Simple things grown in the dirt and kissed by the sun, things that have a soul. I move gently but consistently throughout the day, tending to my home and my garden just like we used to. My body remembers the rhythm. I sleep when it gets dark and wake when it gets light, letting the rhythm of the world lead me. It's a dance I had forgotten. And at 90 years old, I feel more like the young girl I was in that Pennsylvania community than I have in 30 years. I am not telling you to throw away your supplements, dear. I am telling you that what kept an entire community strong for generations was never once sold in a bottle. And some of it is still available to you right now, today, without spending a single dollar. It's a gift waiting to be opened. But where do you begin when the world is so loud? I'll tell you the very first step I took. It's smaller than you think. You might be wondering, dear one, where does a person begin when the world is so loud? The first step I took wasn't a giant leap. It was a small, quiet pause. I sat by my window and just listened. I listened to the wind in the trees and the beating of my own heart. I realized that my body had been trying to speak to me for years, but the noise of bottles and screens had drowned it out. The first step is simply to remember that you are a part of this natural world, not separate from it. Like a seed waiting for the right soil, your health is waiting for you to create the right conditions. It begins with one moment of stillness. If something in this conversation stirred a memory of a simpler way of living, subscribe to this channel. Every week we bring you the wisdom that modern life forgot to carry forward. We are like quilters, each of us holding a different scrap of truth. When we put them together, we see the whole picture of what it means to be truly well. I want to hear your story. Leave a comment below telling me one thing from your own upbringing that kept people well without anyone calling it health advice. Maybe it was a tea your grandmother made or the way your father walked the fields at dusk. Those small things are the greatest medicines. I will be reading every single one, because your wisdom is just as important as mine. Your memories are the seeds of our future. Stay peaceful and keep your hearts open.